Hello everyone, my name is Shane McElroy. Welcome to all of you joining us on our fourth of our spring series of technical webinars this evening. Look, there's been a bit of a lift in the weather. We had it a few weeks ago and then it went bad again, and hopefully it's here to stay now, but we've a bit of warmth and a bit of dry weather and hopefully getting a bit of early silage done and bales tied up. So look, there's plenty of challenges on farms yet. There's still lots of silage pits need to be filled, but we've also, I suppose, moved towards peak milk, and we've also started on most farms in the breeding season as well. So there's a lot happening on farms at the minute, and tonight we're just going to bring you a very short session on some of the key topics for the coming weeks regarding adding value to dairy beef calves and also breeding valuable heifer replacements from within the dairy herd, and a little bit from Joris then on breeding management as well. So look, this evening we'll have two excellent speakers. We'll have our Tier 1 vet, Joris Summers, and we'll also have the Beef 2020 programme, Tier 1's 2020 Beef Club programme manager, Ross Brady then as well, who brings some important updates on breeding the most purposeful and valuable calves for 2025. Look, the webinar this evening will be recorded as usual and will be available on the YouTube channel from tomorrow morning. And please, you're very welcome to type in your questions into the Q&A function in the Teams app, and we'll get a look at those as they come in, and we'll put those to the speakers later on in the session. So look, without further ado, I'm going to move the slides on here, and just to cover off our two speakers are Joris and Ross, who are going to cover the topics. And without further ado, Joris, I'll hand over to yourself on breeding management and managing the heifer replacements for next year.
Thank you very much, Shane, and good evening, everybody. So I'm going to very briefly talk about the breeding management at this stage of the breeding season, because I suppose we're into the first week of May, so pretty much every herd in the country will have started breeding by now, or is at the start of the breeding season, and some herds have been breeding away for 2-3 weeks at this stage. So I suppose very briefly, what do we do about animal health? You have to obviously maintain that during the breeding season from the start to the finish. So first step, I would say, look at the overall disease control within the herd, and some of the key ones there is what's the vaccination status of the herd. And there have been some supply issues with, for example, the lepto vaccine over the last couple of months. So that's one where maybe it fell down this year. It's something to keep in mind, that if that didn't happen on time, you may need to review that again and see where that happens. But also your parasite control is important, especially for your breeding heifers, because they're still the growing animal in the herd, and parasites can still affect them. So if they weren't treated for parasites and they had plenty of exposure last year, then maybe that's a reason why they haven't reached a weight target that they should have. So it's something to keep in mind as we're going through the breeding season. So a few practical tips that tie in with that is, look at the recent boat tank herd disease screening report that you would have received from Tirlon, and there will be a new one in a couple of weeks as well. So that will allow you to track during and throughout the breeding season. If you haven't done the vaccinations yet, I would still recommend that you go and do them, but avoid vaccinating animals in that week before breeding starts for those animals, because they really it upsets them a little bit, and it mightn't show any signs of heat. So overall, I would say actually avoid using vaccinations during the first round of AI. Once the breeding season is well underway and you have a good level of conception rate in the herd already, I think then it's warranted to go in with the vaccine and not leave it run much later, and leave a window in which the animals could get infected. The next step after that then is really specifically on the fertility side. You may have done some pre-breeding checks on those earliest calf cows, and that might have happened earlier in April already. But for the later calving cows, they're usually the ones that are a little bit less fertile. They're maybe the slightly older cow. They may have had a few more issues like milk fever. Maybe some of them held their cleanings. And so it's important to look at those cows and really not try and delay breeding any longer in them than necessary, because they will run out of time. So any animal that's, let's say, 15 days in milk and has an issue around calving in those first 14 days, I would say get a vet to actually check her out early so that she still has a chance to come right before it's, let's say, 42 days in milk, and she doesn't miss too many days in the breeding season. And as the breeding season is underway and you're doing your heat detection for the animals that are ready to be bred, also keep going with the pre-breeding heat detection on those late calving cows so that you can pick up animals that aren't cycling 3 weeks after calving, 4 weeks after calving. So again, that somebody can check them out and maybe correct something that's amiss, and that again you don't lose too many days on those cows because they are short on time. And then finally, there is obviously the nutrition and the mineral balance of the animals as well. So what that really is, and this year might have been quite challenging because, you know, energy intakes in the cows were below target this spring because of the challenging weather that we've had. So too many cows will be in low body condition and have lost excess body condition score. And so it's about maintaining their energy intake now and their mineral supply. And the best way to do that is, okay, look at what was the milk protein like a couple of weeks ago when we were, you know, slightly earlier in lactation, and did I keep it above 3.05% for the bulk of the herd at that stage? And now during the breeding season, keep an eye on your milk urea levels, because that will really allow you to play with energy intake and protein for those animals when that's important. So if we then continue on and look at, well, we're in the breeding season now, can we gauge how well it's going early on already? Or do we have to wait until 60 days after the breeding season before we can scan anything in calf and then make a decision? No, there are things you can look at now, and there's some breeding key performance indicators that you can really look at. And we've seen these before. And many people would have reviewed these at the end of a breeding season or a few months after the breeding season based on the ICBF breeding season report, and you have your submission rate, your conception rate, your 6-week in-calf rate, and so on. But there's also weekly fertility reports that you can get on apps or on ICBF, and they will actually give you your 3-week submission rate, your conception rate, or your first serve, and you can see some of the targets there that are traditionally used nationwide, but maybe you have different goals in the herd. Maybe you don't need such a high 6-week in-calf rate. Maybe you're happier with a slightly spread out calving season. So it's really important for yourself to look at, okay, this is the target for my herd. But one of the pieces that I would like to call out here now to make quick decision making in the breeding season is, once you've gone past the first 3 weeks of the breeding season, there are animals that were bred in those first 3 weeks that may come back, repeat breeders. And any animal that is not seen repeating after the first 3 weeks is adding to your non-return rate. And that's a good indication of that animal being pregnant. So that will allow you to make decisions on the type of breeding that you're going to do. The next point in how we go about our breeding is really about that heat detection and the accuracy. And again, what you want to be seeing is that if animals are repeating, that the vast majority, and it needs to be over 65% of the repeat breeders, they need to come back around that 21 days. If you're seeing too many animals coming back short, maybe after 12 days or 15 days or something like that, that's an inaccuracy in the heat detection. Okay, so either the previous serve was not on a real heat, or maybe the one that's observed now isn't a real heat, but somewhere there's an inaccuracy. If there is prolonged heat, so over the 24 days, that could still be an inaccuracy. There could be a degree of embryonic loss there, but it's important to have that detail there. And so keep going with your tail paint, use your different colors or your scratch cards, or if you have the colors, keep looking at the data, keep looking at, is it hitting the 21 days intervals, and then at least you're happy with the heat detection accuracy. And then the last point is, what type of semen are you using? So are you going the AI route? And that's absolutely fine. Have you all the straw selected? I hope at this stage you have done that and you've done your bull selection. Or are you going the stock bull route? Keep in mind, the fertility of the stock bull is maybe not the same as it was last year if you used them in the previous breeding season. So have you tested that? But also, how healthy is your stock bull, and have you enough stock bulls to do the number of empty cows that they will have to deal with? Whether you're using sex semen or conventional semen, we'll come back to that in the next slide, but that's an important question to ask as well, because your breeding strategy will be slightly different depending on the type of semen you're using. And then also, what is the ultimate breeding goal? Are you trying to get dairy replacements, or are you aiming to have a dairy beef calf next spring? because that's the same as asking, well, are you aiming for EBI or DBI? And this slide here shows you quite, I know it's quite busy looking, but this shows two different breeding strategies. When you look at conventional semen on the left-hand side, so all the black animals, and the little ones are the heifers, the big ones are the cows, and every section, every horizontal line shows a 3-week breeding section. So in the conventional, you see that the vast majority of the breeding in the first 2 weeks is obviously conventional dairy breeding, and then it slowly transitions into the beef breeding as the breeding season progresses, whether that's with beef, AI, or a stock bull is actually irrelevant, but you can see what happens there. If we look on the right-hand side, the blue animals are the ones where sex semen was used. So in this herd, all the heifers got their first round of AI with sex semen, and then half of the cows in the first round got sex semen as well, and everything else got beef semen, whether it's conventional semen or whether that is a stock bull. Again, it's irrelevant. But what that shows as a result, and the next step will then give us the calving season for next season, and that's the difference. So in the conventional breeding, you get 27% female dairy replacement. So a nice figure. You can lose a few along the way, but you'll have plenty replacements coming through the pipeline. But you'll also get 27% male dairy calves and 46% beef calves. Whereas if you go down the sex semen route, you still get your 27% female calves, but only 3% male dairy calves, and the remaining 70% of calves will be a mixture of heifer and bull beef calves for next year. So that shows you very clearly what you could achieve with sex semen in the herd. And that's it from me, Shane.
Doris, thanks very much. That's excellent information. Just to dwell a little bit on that graph that we can see on the screen, if we can still see it there. You've got the same number of female dairy, a lot less male dairy breeds, but you've also been able to select specifically which cows you're breeding your replacements from, isn't it, with the sexed?
It is, and that's actually important for multiple reasons. It's not only just to select for the increased genetic gain of the herd, because that's what you're doing. Obviously, you're selecting to the best female animals in your herd to breed sexed semen with, so they'll produce the better replacement heifers in the next generation. But higher EBI animals tend to be more fertile. So there's also a higher likelihood that the sex semen will lead to a pregnancy. And so there's a dual benefit there. By chasing the higher EBI animals to do your sex semen breeding, you're actually going to achieve a double benefit there, both in this breeding season and in the next calving season for your future generations.
And then just the other piece, that apart from the fact that the male dairy, which is the less valuable, obviously is much smaller, you've got all of the green section is purposeful, chosen, high value dairy replacements, and you've got that large yellow section then that's also very purposeful dairy beef, which is again what the market is demanding. So the more that can be done in that, and we'll hear more now in the next few minutes from Ross Brady. So I'll hand over to Ross. So Ross, you're going to take us through the Beef 2020 Club and a little bit about how to breed for a better value dairy beef calf. Over to you, Ross.
Perfect, Shane, and good evening to everyone. Yeah, so I just want to cover off, give an overview of the 2020 Beef Club. We're into our 6th year of the club to date. I suppose it's just important to highlight that there's over 40,000 calves moving through the club now on an annual basis, so it's a substantial number of animals, and that's growing on a yearly basis. But the one thing we are noticing is there is a higher demand now for the better quality calf all the time, and our technical support team try and work with our suppliers to keep improving that quality, whether you're finishing your own stock or selling calves through to finishers. So we're into our 6th year now. If you see in the map of Ireland here in the green, these are all the counties we currently have beef finishers in. So people all in that green area are either buying calves or producing their own calves to bring through the club. We're in 19 different counties. The red circles are actually the key pack factories that the animals are processed in to date. So the club is open to dairy, beef and suckler farmers. there's a club premium on all grades and all breeds of animals. Just to highlight that it's an option for the Tier-Lawn Sustainability Action Payment for all our milk suppliers. And a key element and a big part of the club is the on-farm technical support that both the Tier-Lawn and the Keepack teams provide. I just want to highlight as well, and we'll talk a little bit more about it later, we do have a calf locator app available for people that are looking to sell and promote calves into the club. So this slide just highlights what the additional bonuses are for the different breeds of animals. So the way the bonus works is the average quota price, which is published every Thursday on the Irish Farmers Journal. There's a 30-cent bonus then for a Frisian animal then over the average quota price, 40-cent for all continental breeds, and 50-cent for Angus and Hereford. It's a guaranteed market price. It's an integrated calf to beef program. It's them bonuses are currently paid on steers and heifers, but we also included a young bull bonus. So bulls under the age of 19 months will also receive a 25% bonus that are processed through the club. Just to highlight that the bonus is paid on carcass weight range 260 to 400 kilos. So it's important that animals are hitting spec and hitting them carcass weights to receive all their payments. Another thing I'd just like to highlight, Shane, that for all our members, whether they're supplying calves into the club or finishing animals through the club, there's a cull cow bonus as well of 15 cent a kilo. Next slide, please, Shane. That's just to highlight what this week's price and what the different breed of animals would be receiving that would be processed this week. So if you take your Angus heifer there at 5.20 base price this week, you will be getting the quality assurance at 20 cent or the club protocol bonus. You have your Keepack premium at 20 cent, your Tier-Lawn premium at 10 cent, your breed bonus at 20 cent, and there's also a seasonality bonus which is kicking in. It's 6 cent in April and June and 10 cent in this month in May. So an R grade Angus heifer today would receive €6 through the club. You can see then across a Hereford is the same. Continental then will be hitting 5.90 for an R grade. A Frisian will be at 5.80. If you look at the line below that, which is probably more typical to a lot of dairy beef, would be an O equals grade would be 5.82 there for an Angus, 5.82 for a Hereford, 5.72 for Continental, etc. That's just to highlight what the price at this week. So who can get involved in the club? So we have dairy farmers that are raising their own animals straight way through to beef. We then would have dairy milk suppliers that would be selling calves to other beef farmers through the club who'll be rearing them calves. We'd also have dairy farmers selling maybe runners or say calves that are weaned off milk. They can sell yearlings, can also sell forward stores. The animals are allowed 2 movements before they receive the premium. So suckler farmers then bringing their own stock to finish, and like I say, we'd have beef farmers then purchasing more forward cattle. Go ahead, Shane, again, next slide, please. How to get involved. So anyone, whether you're finishing animals or supplying calves through the club, you must fill out the expression of interest form, which could be downloaded on Tier-Lawn Farm Life, or the contacts here on the left-hand side. Myself and my 2 colleagues, Michelle and Kieran, would also be able to send them out to anyone that's interested or WhatsApp them out. So what type of animals are people looking to purchase through the club? So it's important to highlight that people are getting pickier when they're selecting calves now or looking for calves. There is a bigger emphasis put on the quality of the calf, and the farmers that are staying rearing calves year on year are looking to buy them better quality calves because they are getting the performance when they bring them through at the other end to finish them. So strong, healthy calves are important. Calves with good carcass potential, and we'll look at that in the next slide or two, what that means. Cattle that are going to hit that carcass weight range of 260 to 400 kilos. Some of the lighter animals coming in under that are not hitting that weight. So it's something to be mindful of, to try and produce a high carcass, high growth rate animal. So the commercial beef value is, I suppose, a very important tool for our beef farmers when they're buying calves, and we'll look at that now in a second. Next slide, please, Shane. So some of the top tips we would discuss with our members and our suppliers when we're out on farm in terms of what bulls to select or what to be mindful of when selecting bulls for this year's breeding season. So it's important, I suppose, first of all, to look at the DBI and the high DBI bulls. But the important thing to note is 31% of DBI is still down to calving and gestation length, which the beef farmer might not be as interested in, and that's where the commercial beef value comes into play. So consider high reliability bulls if you want more accurate data. Pick bulls with high beef subindex, and we'll look at that now in a second. And pick bulls with suitable gestation length. So what we see happening a bit now on farms as well is, so early in the breeding season, some farmers may pick bulls that will carry a bit of time, like Limousin, maybe Hereford, breeds like that can afford to allow carry a small bit, and then they may look at the shorter gestation bulls for later on the breeding season, like Angus or Aubrac. So match calving difficulty to suit your cow type. So more mature cows, there is a possibility to push the calving difficulty that little bit more and go for that higher birth weight calf that will essentially have a higher carcass weight in the future. But also for your younger cows, second calvers, first calvers, it's important to keep an eye on the calving index figures. Next slide, please, Shane. So this is just a snippet from the recommended bull list off the ICBF web page. So if you look at the column here in green beside the DBI, so these are all high DBI bulls. But what I'm trying to highlight here is to look at the beef subindex. So don't just choose on high DBI, because like I say, 31% of that is calving difficulty is in that, whereas you can look more into the beef trait. So select high beef subindex bulls. All these bulls here are relatively easy calving. So if you look at the two top bulls, they're both around 2% calving difficulty on cows, which is very good, and to be both relatively easy calving. But if you look at the carcass weight here on the right hand side, there's 14 kilos difference in carcass weight. So that will follow through when then animals go to the slaughter line. You will see a big difference in terms of carcass weight. If you look below that, then there's actually a bull there, high DBI. It's middling beef subindex, but it's actually a minus carcass figure. So that bull would be perfect, I suppose, for first calving heifers or things like that. But for more mature cows, you could select a bull, an Angus bull below it there that's actually 14 plus 14 on carcass weight. But it's something that we work with on farms with our suppliers. One breed we are finding working really well. They're low, they're short gestation, they're easy calving, and showing really good in terms of carcass figures is the Aubrac breed, and they are getting more popular on farms. Belgian Blues are really high in carcass weight, just to be careful on the calving figures. The Limousin bulls then at the bottom, they're relatively easy calving and have exceptional carcass weight as well. And there is more of a swing for the continental breeds through the club, because they are killing out probably a grade higher. They are killing out higher kilo percentage, and they're still receiving a good bonus through the club as well. You can flick on, please, Shane. So the commercial beef value is a relatively new tool. It's more applicable, I suppose, to the person buying calves, because within the commercial beef value, gestation length or calving ease isn't within that index. It's made up of carcass weight, carcass conformation, carcass fat, docility, and feed intake. So it's all important things for the beef farmer that's looking to buy into calves. So the higher the value is on a calf, the more likely that animal is to perform, to kill out higher, have higher kill out percentage, eat less, and hit all the grades. And I might, if you flick to the next slide, it'll just give you an indication of what a high value is and a low values within the breeds. The next slide, please, Shane. So if you look at the Angus, which is on top, so the average euro value for the Angus breed is actually €72. This is all progeny bred off the dairy herd. So if you are looking for Angus that is within the top 10% in the country, you're looking at above €100 of a value. So basically what that's saying is that €116 is €116 above what the average is. The Aubrac breed then is higher than that, and obviously once you go into the higher beef merit breeds like Belgian Blue, the euro value is going to increase. It's important to highlight there the Frisian as well. Is the average is actually €6. We are finding this year that there is less demand for Frisian bull calves within club member, across the club member farm. The early Frisian bull, there's still some demand for, but the later Frisian bull calf, is a harder sell this year, and there is a higher appetite for the continental breeds and the Angus and Hereford breed. So for anyone that's looking to promote their calves through 2020, wants to fill out an expression of interest form, they will have access to the Calf Locator app. This is a very useful tool for both the person selling the calf, but also the beef farmer that's looking to buy in the calf. If you look at the right hand side, it shows the tag number of the animals. It'll show the age by months, the breed of the animal, what the dam is, the breed of the dam, but it also gives the commercial beef value on each individual calf, and it'll give the sex. So when a supplier puts the calf up on the Calf Locator app, it'll just show the county and the number of calves that person has for sale, and also the contact details. And then our beef farmers then can make contact with them. They can filter out per county, they can filter out by CBV, they can filter out by age and by sex. So it's a very useful tool for both people selling and buying calves. That's it from me, Shane.
Ross, thanks very much for that. Excellent slides again and great info on the club. But I'm particularly interested in, Ross, in the CBV. We've got our dairy farmer audience on the webinar this evening. The CBV, you're calling it out, and it's bang on. It's for the beef farmer, but that's the end point for whether the dairy farmers rearing them themselves or the beef farmer that's buying them. That's what it's all about, and that's a relatively new tool, Ross. Tell me, in terms of accuracy of that, I mean, how dependable is it? Is it the be all and end all?
I suppose because it's relatively new, it's probably not 100% accurate. But the one thing I will say with the National Genotyping Program, which is in place now, that accuracy is gonna multiply very, very quickly. But also, with people like back a couple of years ago, only 50% of animals actually had a sire recorded. That number is actually increasing, and that's all bringing more accuracy to the CBV as well. But the like of Keepack and the other meat processors are feeding back that information now in terms of carcass grading and kill out percentages, etc. And that's all improving the accuracy too. But what we find through the club, the higher within the last couple of years, the higher commercial beef value animals are hitting the grades, they are killing out better and they're killing out younger.
Tell me, Ross, dairy beef, right, from the top to the bottom, what's the difference? Like, I mean, in terms of growth rates, in terms of profitability, the money they leave behind, the carcass quality, the grades, you know, where's the opportunity for improvement, I suppose?
Yeah, well, one thing just to note is 70% of the animals processed now in the country is coming from dairy beef, so it's important to highlight that. In terms of profitability, Teagasc are showing that it's probably matching suckler farming in terms of overall profitability. But I suppose the big thing in the future is going to be the whole genetics, and by breeding the better quality calves, you can excel that profitability very quickly. The lower beef merit calves are probably struggling in terms of profitability compared to the higher beef merit calves. So it's important that we are continuously improving that.
So for the dairy farmer out there that's maybe not necessarily at the top end of beef genetics within their dairy herd, if you get me, what can they do? How can DBI and then CBV help them to add value to their dairy beef?
Yeah, so like I was saying earlier, if they can select higher beef merit bulls, especially on their more mature cows that can take maybe a slightly higher birth weight animal compared to your younger cows, that's a start. And you know, and I suppose only 50% is coming from the sire. There's still 50% coming from the dam, but also having a look, I suppose, at your dam and keep an eye on I suppose the beef merits within that as well, to try and improve the overall quality of the calves.
Yeah. Guys, just a reminder to everyone on the call, please send in your questions. We have a couple of questions in there and a couple more coming in. But just if you do want to put in your name and location, we'll be always interesting for us to know who we're talking to, who we're answering the questions for. Ross, last piece on the CBV particularly. I did a bit of searching on Dundee last night. Not a lot of people are advertising CBV when they're advertising their calves. It's only getting going, is it?
Yeah, and I'd say it is relatively new. What we are noticing now is a lot more of the people rearing calves are actually looking for the CBV value of the calves before they're actually buying them. Like it's actually a world leading index. No one else, there's no one else really in the world that has that kind of an index that is based on the beef merit. Like 93% of the CBV is based around beef. So like 35% is carcass weight, you have feed intake, you know, you have carcass spec, and there's only 7% based around carbon, and that carbon is all about reducing the age of slaughter as well, which is a key component to driving profitability within dairy beef.
Yeah, no, and look, I think it's increasingly going to become very relevant. It's starting, as I say, there's a proportion, but it's small yet, on Dundee advertising their CBVs, some of them with numbers on there. So I think that's the value then of the app there, that shows potential buyer what they're dealing with, what is the CBV, and I know if I'm buying calves and it's not going to be this year, but hopefully maybe a couple next year. That's where we need to be.
And you'll generally find, Shane, is the people with the higher CBV who will actually promote their calves.
100%,
with the high
exactly.
CBV.
That's the ones I saw, indeed. Yeah.
Yeah.
So come here, Ross. I'm going to give you a break, and there's a couple of questions in here. Yours on sex semen. There's two people have messaged 3 questions about sex semen, so I'm going to throw them all at you. How many straws of sex semen do I need to breed all my replacements from sexed? So I suppose that depends on how many replacements I need. What's your opinion on using sex semen during the second round of breeding, which I suppose where people are going now, second lot? And then should the heifers or the cows receive the sex semen?
Okay, I'll do the last question first, actually, because it's not so much should it be one or the other. It's actually the type of animal that you're looking at that should receive the sex semen. So because you're aiming to get your replacement heifers out of sex semen, you should really be looking at the animals that already fit your breeding goal the most. So for most herds, that's the highest EBI animals in the herd, and for most herds, those are the younger animals in the herd. Now, coincidentally, the younger animals are usually also the more fertile ones and the ones that have less other health issues. So when you're looking at using sex semen, I would always recommend, if it suits your management on the farm, right? If you're already AIing your heifers and you can manage AIing them with sex semen, then I would certainly recommend you use sex semen on the heifers. But if you're currently in a situation where actually the heifers are out on an out farm, there's not enough facilities there, you run a stock bull with them, then I think using sex semen there is maybe a bit of a jump to take. But overall, you want to look at the animals that are the longest calved, really, and you're really looking at animals that are calved 60 days. All right, animals that are healthy, no history of disease, animals that have a history of going in calf after one serve. Okay, for the heifers that doesn't apply, but for the other animals, that's something that you want to keep in mind. And also, animals that have had no calving issues this time around. Anything that could compromise their fertility, I would stay away from the sex semen with them, because sex semen itself already had you're taking a little hit on fertility on the sex semen because the manipulation that's done. Now, overall, the quality of the sex semen has really improved. And so if you have good fertility in the herd, you're still going to achieve probably 90 to 95% of the fertility that you would get with traditional or conventional semen, you will get out of sex semen if you're a fertile herd, and you have a good managed setup. The first question was how many sex semen straws do you need? And you're right, Shane. It depends on how many replacements you want. So what is the goal in the herd, right? Are we static? Are we expanding? Maybe the goal for the herd is I have a very high genetic merit herd, and part of my business model is selling high genetic merit replacement heifers. So in that situation, you're obviously going to use more. But if you're just looking to generate 25% replacements, you'll probably get away with, if you add up all the animals in the herd that you're going to breed and divide it by 2, that's the number of sex semen straws you're going to need. Another way of calculating it, and then it doesn't really matter how many replacement heifers you want, is double the number of replacement heifers you're looking for, and that's the number of straws you need. So in other words, 2 sex semen straws per replacement heifer that you're looking for. And that will, for most herds with decent enough fertility, will deliver you the number of replacement heifers you're looking for. So 2 straws per heifer that you're looking for. And by now I've forgotten the second question, Shane.
Yeah, no, well, what's your opinion on using sex semen during the second round of breeding?
Yes. In general, I would try and steer away from it. I think if you're using it on the heifers and on the cows, you can probably use up all those straws in the first round. So I think that's the safest bet. If the first breeding didn't hold and you had selected those cows based on they should be very fertile, they're long enough calved, and they didn't hold, then I would avoid using sex semen on those animals in the second round, and I would go either for conventional dairy semen if you really want to still get a 50-50 chance of having a replacement heifer out of that animal, or I would go down the route of the beef if you feel you'll have enough replacements from the other animals.
So let's get the sex straws used in the next week or 2, given that the first round is probably coming to an end. Yeah,
that's it. Use them early in the season.
Ross, a couple of questions just on. We've a couple more to come back to you, Yaris, but I'll give you a break there. In terms of the program, most of the questions coming in are about the program rather than CBV, so that tells the story as well. But if I sign up to the program, do all of my cattle have to be sold through the club? And then there's another question about the purchase of animals for the club as well. So what's the story there, Ross?
Yeah, so no, I suppose the answer for all the animals sold through the club is no. If you are supplying calves through the club, you can supply any number, but there's no reason why you have to supply them all through the club. You can still supply them to any other way you normally do it. If you contract your cattle into the club to finish, just the animals that you sign in on an annual basis must be finished through the club. But again, you don't have to contract all your animals into the club either.
Yeah, fair enough. Who decides when 2020 animals are ready to go to the factory, and then what is the age of slaughter that's acceptable for 2020?
Yeah, so for the animals going to the factory, key pack procurement team would normally go out and select the animals as they come fit. So our club members would be liaising with them on a regular basis to tell them, okay, I've cattle coming fit. Will you come and pick what's fit? And they'll book them in. Our club members find that very useful because it's in key pack's interest to make all the cattle qualify for all the grades and to hit all the specs. And like 95% of the animals contracted into club are hitting all the specs and all the grades on an annual basis, and that's down to the technical support that they're receiving on farm and the selection process with KeyPack. This age of slaughter, it's part of our targets and goal is to try and reduce the age of slaughter on an annual basis. So animals under 28 months of slaughter will qualify for all bonuses. Our current average age of slaughter on heifers is just over 22 months, and it's just over 24 months on steers, which is about 3 months below the national average. And I suppose from a sustainability point of view, that has a huge reduction in in terms of carbon footprint.
3 months behind,
which is a big
3
selling
months
point, I
ahead,
suppose.
Ross.
Yeah, 3 months
absolutely.
ahead. Yeah,
3 months.
it's around 20% of a reduction.
Wow, that's 3 months is and in terms of cash flow and carrying animals, for, you know, geez, yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, Ross, we'll come back to you in a minute. Yours, a veterinary question: is it too late to vaccinate cows for IBR and lepto? The one that always comes halfway through breeding.
Is it too late? It's I suppose it's never too late to vaccinate, right? But again, I would if you've started breeding, or if you're about to start breeding, in a way, I would say hold off with the vaccine for now, because the stress of vaccinating, the animals might not show any signs of heat. And if it is early in the breeding season, you don't want to miss that first heat and miss the whole first round of breeding, right? But if you're now 3 weeks into the breeding season and you never got around to your IBR or your lepto, if the first 3 weeks went quite well, you feel you have a good submission rate and so on, there's going to be no harm to the pregnancies that are already there now when you vaccinate those animals. So I would say in that situation, yeah, after the first round of breeding, go in and vaccinate those animals, and don't take the increased risk of delaying that on the fertility of the animals, and especially those two, lepto and IBR, can have a huge impact on conception rates and so on in the herd. So don't delay much longer is really what the advice would be there. Yeah.
Well, ideally most people wouldn't be there that have done it a couple months ago, but then that does happen and things get forgotten. One on a bit on nutrition, Yaris, does high milk urea have an impact on breeding and conception?
Yeah, and look, where the milk urea comes in, and I'm not going to go into the detail where milk urea as such comes from and how to correct it, because I'm not a nutritionist, but urea is a waste product of the protein digestion in a way in the animal, and really high levels of milk urea show that there is a high level of this waste product, and that actually impacts the egg quality that you're hoping that will lead to a conception in the animal. Okay, so if the animals have been seeing or if you've been seeing high levels of milk urea in the bulk tank leading up to the breeding season and into the breeding season, that means that at least in some animals, their fertility will be knocked down a bit because of the impact that has on the eggs that are being produced every time the animal ovulates. Very low milk urea, by the way, is also not ideal. So when we're talking about the normal milk urea range, where somewhere 20 to 35 is roughly where you're looking. So very high milk urea, you're really looking at 40 and above. Very low milk urea, you're probably getting into trouble if your milk urea drops below 10 after the animals have been served. Seemingly that has an impact on the conception then as well.
Two last questions, one for you, Yaris, and one for you, Ross. So I'll give you Yaris and then back to you, Ross, for the last one. Will once a day breeding impact pregnancy rates for sex semen, Yaris?
Short answer is yes, Shane, and that has to do with the fact that sex semen, because it's been manipulated a little bit extra in the sexing process, doesn't survive as long as conventional semen once the animal has been AI'd. So once it's been deposited in the cow, it has a much shorter viability, less than 24 hours, whereas conventional semen can last for a good bit longer. And so the timing of your sex semen AI is more important. So if you know exactly when the animal started bulling, right, when the standing heat started, so if you use collars, you could check this on the app, but if you know exactly when that happened, the actual ovulation will only happen after 24 hours, right? So that's when the actual ovulation happens. And from then on, the egg can be fertilized. The sex semen can only go in somewhere like 14 to maybe 20 hours after the standing heat started. So traditionally, people would say the animal nearly needs to have gone off the standing heat before you go in with sex semen.
Yeah.
And so on a once a day, that's not always possible.
Some are going to get served too soon. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Ross, this is another question has come in now. So what breed of calves are most in demand through the 2020 club by the buyers? And then I'll leave the other one for a minute. Go on, take us through that one.
Yeah, so all beef breeds in particular, but the one thing I will say is there's huge variation within breeds. So there is a big demand obviously for Hereford and Angus, as the highest premium is being paid on them. But what we are seeing is there's huge variation within all breeds. So there's big demand for the continental breeds based on the 10-cent bonus for all the continental breeds. So the limousines, Belgian Blues, Aubracs, Speckled Parks are all coming through for that. But Angus and Hereford are very popular because they are hitting the age of slaughter as well. They are pulling back the age of slaughter because they're early maturing and easier fleshing.
And we've a dairy farmer on here. He's calves thinking of selling. How does he access the app to advertise when he wants to advertise them?
Yeah, so just fill out the expression of interest form, send it back, and he will be granted access then to the calf locator app. So the calf locator app is actually it's in ICBF, so you have to download ICBF web app, and the 2020 section is within that, but you won't have access until you fill out an expression of interest form.
And we can get that out to anyone now. That person didn't put their name in, so we can contact them. But Ross, they can get in touch with yourselves.
Any of the farmer, the business managers or branches will all have the forms, or Tyrone Farm Life.
Ross,
the 2020 team. Yeah,
you've been very good in answering all those questions. Thanks very much for that. Look, we'll wrap it there. We're at 45 minutes or a bit more. So look, guys, to everyone who has joined the call tonight, and to all of our speakers, thanks very much. Thanks for all your questions and engagement on it. Look, every farm is different, and there's loads of individual solutions for each farm scenario. So there's plenty of advice there in terms of whether it be on dairy beef or whether it be on EBI and breeding heifer replacements, and even on in terms of steering on the on breeding management at the minute as well. So look, all the local Tyrone representatives will be able to help you with each of those queries that you have. Hope everybody has got some useful information out of the webinar this evening, and we'll be able to apply those on your own farms in the coming weeks. Look, thanks to everyone for joining and participating, to our speakers, to Ross and to Joris, and also to Caroline and John, who've been working on the background to deliver the webinar for us. So thanks for joining. Thanks for all your questions. Feel free to reach out to anyone in the team to get any advice you need for your own farm. See you very soon. Safe farming. Thank you.